Well, I forget the name of the doctor who told me this, but she was just completely cold and heartless and almost seemed to hold something against me for it. Just the exact opposite of what you would think a doctor would be. And she was almost like, "Oh, well, you just take some medicines and you'll be fine. People are fine. They live with it. What's the big deal?" Like, that's not, you just told me I have a life threatening illness. But I know now why she reacted that way. Because they know HIV, well, I can't say for sure this is why she reacted that way, but it seems to me she knew something about HIV. Maybe the fact that it was never isolated. So people who don't know about virus isolation, you should probably learn, okay? Because it's very important, especially with what's going on today. Virus isolation is the process in which you discover a virus as the cause of an illness. It's the process where they take an infected part of your body. I've had to become like a virus expert, okay? Because just to live, to not kill to not be killed by just medical malpractice that is running rampant in our country right now. So HIV was never isolated. That is the process of taking infected tissue, what they call infected tissue, because, yeah, you'll see they never isolated any virus, so-called infectious virus. But there's this process. It can be done. It's been done with um, like viruses. The first virus that was ever found was found in algae, I believe. It was in the sea, I know that, by a doctor with a real long German name that I can't remember at the moment, but I'll think of it. And he discovered the first virus, and it was symbiotic with the plant, meaning it helped it survive. They lived off each other. The virus helped the plants in the sea survive, and the plant helped the virus survive. So it was a symbiotic relationship. It was not a parasitic one. That was the first virus ever discovered. And that was found taking part of the plant and doing some scientific processes involving isolation, where they try to isolate the specific viron from the leaf or tissue sample, whatever, itself. They try to isolate. They do isolate the meaning separate from the plant the virus to get a pure form of it. Okay, because that's the only way you can then test to see if you actually even have a virus. And from there, in this case, in the C thing, it wasn't something that made the plant sick. So there was no need to inject it into other plants to see if it would make them sick. But if it's an infectious virus in a person, of course, you want to isolate. It's just logic, okay, guys? You don't need to be a doctor to understand this, okay? But I'm trying to, it's involved, so I'm trying to give you, as much as I can without getting too detailed. But it's just logic. You have to know if something is causing something, you have to be able to see it. That is science. It's observation. They're supposed to isolate, and to see it, they need to isolate it from the infected cell and get it separate. Okay, if they're saying there's a virus, they need to separate it from the whatever sample they say is infected, so that we know there's an actual virus there. And then they are required, society, their own rules, to take what are called electron microscope pictures of the tiny little virus that's I believe smaller than the width of a human hair, by a lot. So it's incredibly small, okay? And then, if it's an infectious virus, that's just step one. You'd have to first isolate it just to see and know there's a virus, and take a picture so you can prove it, because science is about proof. It's 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 observation, right? So if you can't observe somebody's science, it's not science, right? So you have to observe it and take a picture, and that's observing it. But then you have to prove it causes the illness you allege it is causing. And how would you do that? Well, of course, once you have it isolated and it is only the virus, you can then inject it into an animal or a person or whatever, tissue, cells, well, you shouldn't infect an actual living thing because you want to see the exact same symptoms come up 100% of the time. Then you would have some suggestive evidence that the virus is actually the cause of the original illness. Okay? I say some because that still doesn't entirely prove it. There could be other things within the virus, like fluid, other things that could still be the culprit, making the virus look like the culprit but not being it. And nonetheless, that would be sufficient evidence for me to consider that this virus is the cause of this illness that they say exists. So after 5 years of being on these meds and my health just going meds and my health just going downhill, I became disabled. I I couldn't walk. I had spinal problems. I developed a spinal disease. Um, I somehow my meniscus tore in my knee one day, dude, just leaning on an air mattress. Like real bad things started to happen to me. My health was not good. After about 4 years on the meds is when it really started. I really started to look bad. I was skinny. I lost all the fat pads in my face. I discovered later that taking Truvada, which is what I took, they call it PrEP for people. They give it to people who are not positive, saying it will protect them from HIV. There's no evidence for that. There's no evidence for HIV. But I'm still, getting to all that. But I was getting sicker and sicker, and I one day took a picture of myself, and I looked so skinny. I was like kind of terrified, and didn't click then. I didn't know what it was. I just thought I wasn't eating enough. And then I discovered these two documentaries that you can watch too, that are free right here on YouTube, called House of Numbers and The Emperor's New Virus. Both of them they're old. They appear to be from the 90s, I believe. I could be wrong, early 90s, late mid 90s, I don't know, somewhere around there. Uh, so people have been challenging this theory that HIV causes AIDS for a long time. You've just never heard of it because of censorship, okay? And the mere fact you've never heard of many of these amazing doctors, many of which are Nobel Prize winners, who contest the theory. It is a theory that HIV causes AIDS. It is not a fact. Uh, the reason why you've never heard of these doctors is due to censorship, and that's proof right there. The mere fact you have not heard all sides of the argument is proof none of us are being properly informed by our doctors. Again, I don't necessarily blame the doctors. Some of them don't even know themselves, and they're very busy people, and they just believe what the government tells them, like a lot of people do today, don't they? Yeah, well, you're going to see why that's not such a good idea. Hopefully, if you're not tuning out of this already, because it's just hard for some people to hear, and I get that. So if it's too hard for you to hear the truth and you want to go risk your life with a fake HIV test, you can click out of this video and go do that right now. But I'm here to try to save the people who want to live, and do not want to be killed by a fake disease and the toxic medicine they give you as a so-called treatment. Okay? HIV was never isolated. Dr. Luc Montagnier, who is credited with discovering HIV, okay, and I get so upset talking about this. He admits that in House of Numbers and Emperor's New Virus, that he never isolated his new virus. What? The discoverer of HIV, admits he never isolated his own virus, so he never proved there was a virus. If you look at the actual electron microscope pics that they submitted as so-called proof of HIV, it's just cell particles. You can look at slides from 80 years ago and see the same exact so-called HIV particles in tissue samples from then. But yet that wasn't HIV, and that person was okay. But today we see this ball with what they say is a spike on it in the slide, and they go, oh, that's HIV. Okay, no, it's not, and there's a lot of problems with it. He added, you have to read the actual scientific report, which is broken down in the Emperor's New Virus. Okay, they added human cells. I'm making this too complicated, but they added human cells, okay, to the culture before doing the isolation. Human cells are gonna. Why would you do that? You're adding things to you. You did all this work to apparently isolate the virus, and then you're gonna add human cells to it. I mean, that threw off a number of things after that, probably on purpose, because then that's what you're seeing in the slide. Okay, they add embryonic fetal tissue to the culture, so you're probably just seeing cell particles in that picture. Nonetheless, even if it is HIV like they claim, they never actually isolated it. It's in the picture. You can see other things. They mark it, not HIV, not HIV. Oh, but this one here, this one circle with a point in it that looks like a virus, that's the virus. But these other things here, they're not viruses. Well, if there's other things in the picture, then you didn't isolate it. And they mark it clearly not HIV, and this is HIV. It's a scam, people, and I'm living proof, okay? Would you like to see how I look after 2 years of not taking any HIV medicines? It's actually chemotherapy. It's exactly what it was developed for in the beginning.